Hello everyone and welcome back to Knit Chocolate Pearls. Today's video I'll be reviewing the King Cole Cosmos thread yarn. Now this yarn is 76% glitter yarn, 24% paillette. This is literally a thread. You wouldn't be knitting or crocheting with this on its own unless you wanted something incredibly fine and stringy. The fabric of it itself is quite plasticky. It is a little bit rough. It's very much like the thread you would get that attaches a gift tag onto a bag. So this isn't something you want to use to just make a garment on your own. It's not going to be thick enough anyway. It does come in multiple colours and it's available quite widely online. As you can see, I've used quite a lot of this one already, not as much of the silver. You can get like gold with these multicoloured sequins. You can also get a gold with gold sequins. You have the silver with the multicoloured sequins. You also have it with silver ones. Now these also have full multicoloured sequins, not just these iridescent ones, actually like red, blue, gold in them. They have a black version as well that has multicoloured ones or plainer ones too. I recommend having a look online because they have quite a few in the range in different shops. They're all different versions. So yeah, it's worth considering that and considering what you want before you order. Do be aware that these yarns tend to sell out quite quickly in the later part of the year because people use them for decorations and stuff. So if you're looking for them for like autumn, winter, Christmas, New Year's things, do be aware of that if you wanted to purchase them later in the year, that they do sell out quite quickly, especially the most colourful ones. However, with nearly 400 metres on the ball, you do get quite a lot. For example, if I were making a jumper, I would need maybe 2 and a bit of these if I was to knit it, and perhaps like 3 full ones if I was crocheting. You can get quite a lot on these really. I've made multiple ornaments from this. I've made, I think, 2 other hats aside from this, which I'll demonstrate on in a minute, and you still get a lot on it compared to this one, which is almost full. I'll show you another project or two that I've done with them in a minute so you can see what they work up like. But first, let's get on with the demonstration. So for this demonstration, I'm going to use a project I'm currently working on. This is just a basic crochet beanie hat, just my own pattern, work as I go, in Stylecraft dark brown with the King Cole Cosmos. Now with this yarn, I will say that even holding it two together as you're supposed to, this yarn splits quite often, so you do have to be careful when you're working with it. Another thing I've noticed is sometimes if you're working like half or double crochets or triples of course, this yarn, as it pulls through, it tangles up in some of the other threads. Did you see that there as it caught? It can split the yarn and tangle, or it can become entangled in the other threads because they don't sit fully flush. Even if you pull them very tight, I wouldn't recommend having them too tight because it can put more tension on the yarn and it could cause snapping, it could cause unevenness, or if you wash your yarn it could cause it to become undone. If you noticed under that loop there, I'm not going to pull this back now because I can't bother to go back that far, but there's a bit that didn't get caught because it was splitting. I don't like it when they do that. This happens quite often. I've pulled this back quite a few times. I've only been working on it a couple of hours. It's just a quick project really, but it is annoying. That is my pet peeve with yarn, is when it splits. Like here, perfect demonstration of it just misses the hook. Like I often work with 2 yarns held together or 2 strands held together and it doesn't split like this. But that is just part of having this sort of tinsel type yarn, is the way it's wound, is it can come undone quite easily. It also adds a slight scratch to your garments, so if you're someone who hates anything that could be a little bit scratchy, you want your projects plush and supple and fluffy, this is not something to add in. It's not painful, but it's rubbing against skin. If you can hear it, let me know. It's just a bit, it's rougher, it's not fully soft. So that's it as it's worked up. You can see quite a few rows, you can see the sequins in some parts, and inside it's exactly the same. So it just adds a sparkle of thread, a bit of glitter, it catches the light, you can see it's very noticeable, probably a little bit twinklier in person than it is on the camera because of the daylight. But either way, you get a good even coverage, but not always an even amount of spacing. Sometimes it is the stitches you're working with that can do that, and sometimes it is just the way the yarn wraps up. So you'll get clusters of sequins in places with none for a while. But that adds a bit of interest. Like here, there's no outer sequins, and here there's a lot, so to me that's quite noticeable. That's something that seems to happen with all of the colours, it's not just any one thing. But yeah, it crochets up nicely, it also knits up nicely. I'll do a quick demonstration with the knitting now, and I'll use the silver just to give you an idea of what that works up like. And here's a little swatch of knitting. This is a few rows of garter stitch and a few of stockinette. You can see a few mistakes in it. I left them in on purpose because I thought I wanted you to be able to see what it looks like when this yarn goes a bit wrong. It isn't always easy to work with. You do have to be a little bit watchful of it. So if you think this is going to be something you could just knit quite quickly with and perhaps not look at, it is likely to snag whether you knit or crochet. And I've been working with this yarn for about 2 years and it hasn't really changed. So I don't think it's just a me issue. I feel like this yarn is the type of yarn that separates a lot. That's something to be mindful of when you're working with it. I also in general do like this yarn. It is comfortable to work with. It does have a certain texture. It is a very plasticky texture. It's quite scratchy. If you were thinking about making a bigger project with it, do be mindful that something like a blanket may not be the most suitable project. That's regardless if you knit or crochet, because it could be a bit scratchy. See that there? And see, it's very easy to miss it as well. A big project is likely to be too scratchy, and if you have things like wool and it shrinks or stretches in the wash, be mindful if you pair it with this that this isn't going to shrink or stretch. It is pure tinsel plastic. That's what it looks like up close. If it gets overheated, it is going to snap. It's not going to shrink or anything. You can see the plastic fibres there. See, be mindful of that when you pair it with certain fibres too. It is comfortable to work with. As you saw, it was a little bit snaggy. It doesn't always work up evenly, even if you hold it very precisely. Like down here, the thread is threaded through the back rather than at front, so it looks like there isn't any there. The sequins don't always distribute evenly. Sometimes there are clusters. It snags quite easily, even if you're careful with it. These little loops appear because the yarn itself separates, and it often does unevenly, and you can't pull it back very easily. You have to go back over the stitches. So be mindful that if you're not someone who enjoys pulling your work back a lot, this probably is going to be a bit frustrating to you. So I have a few projects I'm going to show you now, and I'll give some more explanations there. But I do feel like this yarn is best for a slightly smaller project, like a scarf, a hat, toys, ornaments, perhaps incorporated into some patches or as part of a motif, rather than anything large like, say, a jumper dress or a blanket. This is what gold looks like knitted up with Stylecraft Special DK. That's an acrylic yarn with Lana Grossa Avio Chunky. Together that's chunky weight yarn. Gives a lovely effect on garments when knitted with the bigger yarn, especially if it's around that chunky weight again. Whereas with crochet, I feel like it's not as favourable on garments. My hats in worsted and iron don't really look as nice as this does. I feel when it comes to crochet, smaller is better, and knitting, perhaps bigger is better. Particularly when it comes to crochet, simple is better. A simple stitch works better with this type of thread yarn because it, like variegated yarn, it can take away from a stitch pattern. So for example, if you're cabling, it might throw off the balance of the cable so you don't get as much of an effect, or they steal the effect from your stitch work. It can also make patterns look a bit off, or sometimes potentially affect the gauge depending on the precise size you need. Now this is it with a crochet ornament. The little loop broke last winter, broke off the tree, but I can fix that, no problem. This is it with the DK weight Stylecraft yarn. It's only threaded into the deep red. It looks lovely with the ornaments. I'm going to be honest, this is why I said it looks so nice with crochet ornaments or toys, because it really gives them just that pretty effect. On the tree in the festive lighting, this looked lovely, and it was the perfect size to put up like a rolled up note or a little chocolate or something in as a mini gift. So these made really good presents, and I wrapped them into little snowflakes and gave them away as well, crocheted it in. And I felt like this really the best effect from this yarn was small gifty type things, smaller craft projects rather than the big ones. It looks nice in hats and it looks really nice in jumpers and dresses and shawls and things, but I feel like the best effect you get from it is in these small festive or fun gifty projects. I don't know, let me know what you think in the comments below. And here is a project I made about 2 years ago with the King Cole Cosmos. It's held up really well over time. It gives a nice subtle effect with the cooler toned colours. It's very pretty. So we have some brilliant daylight here right now. You can see there's a few snags and a few little pulls where it does separate a lot. That splitting is something that infuriates me. If you watch my channel regularly, you'll know how much I despise yarns that snag and split. Unfortunately, this one does it relatively often, but it's just a yarn you have to be more cautious with working with. It has a completely different texture to most of the other plastic style yarns, so do be aware of that. It is something you will notice when you're working with. It's not uncomfortable or hard to work with or anything at all. It's not painful. But overall, I would rate it really well for smaller crochet projects for as an accent in a larger piece. Or I would recommend it if you were trying to get a really glittery, perhaps more festive effect or something. It's a lovely yarn. It is a little bit scratchy. It does feel a little bit plasticky, but overall I would say it's worth it, especially if you're gifting or making things like ornaments, Christmas projects, that sort of thing. That's what this yarn is probably best suited for, in my opinion. You could make bigger projects with it, but I wouldn't recommend blankets or anything because it is that little bit scratchier, it is that little bit more uncomfortable, and it has absolutely no give. It's not the sort of yarn that will, say, shrink like wool or stretch out a lot. I think what would happen to this yarn when it starts to damage is it would overheat and split. So, and it would break. You would lose your sequins too. So yeah, so I think that's enough for this video today. If you enjoyed it, please like, comment and subscribe. It really helps my channel out, and I hope to see you next week.